I can start my video because the host has stopped it.
Oh, the Kalwan, please enable videos for everyone.
Yes, it's enabled.
Okay, not with me. You cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Albert, I stopped. Kalwan, please check. Okay, so we start. So this is our first working group meeting as part of and presentation. We had one online meeting this year earlier, but as per 15.com, today we are going to have our first meeting, and we have 3 NGOs who have volunteered to share their experiences. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you from across the world, and we will start. So we will start with Cholpanai, who is from Kyrgyzstan, and Cholpanai will be presenting on indicators 18 and 21. One is the media involvement in awareness raising, and the other is engagement for safeguarding ICH among stakeholders. Over to you, Cholpanai.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Just a minute.
Sure.
Let me set the norms. So please write down your questions in this chat so that after the presentation, all of us can discuss. And I'll request all of you to restrict to 10 minutes maximum so that we have enough time for discussion. And at the end of 10 minutes, I'll give you a chat message. And if you are not seeing, I'll budge in. Okay. And all of you, please keep yourself muted and video on. Thank you. Start.
Okay, good afternoon, all the participants and organizers of today's session. Thank you so much for making today's event happening. I'm very happy to be presenting our work. My colleague Isa and I are here today and would like to share our work on assessing the frameworks number 18 and 21. So I'd like to just share the screen with you and open up the presentation very quickly. So since the operational results framework is such a relatively new concept, it was a little challenging for us to find the right approach to assess and to measure. And then we decided to choose number 21 because we wanted to look at the ICH elements that we've been working with and look at the community's engagement on these ICH elements. So this number 21 is actually on the engagement for safeguarding in ICH and then is enhanced among stakeholders. So here we have 3 assessment factors. So it's communities, groups and individuals, and NGOs and other civil society actors and private sector entities. So what we tried to do is to look by these 3 factors. So we took 3 specific ICH elements that we work with. It's epic trilogy, Manasa, Mete, and Saitek, and traditional instrumental music. These 2 elements actually are inscribed into our national inventory. And number 3 is pilgrimage rituals and practices at sacred sites. This is the element that is not yet inscribed into our national inventory, but we're trying to get it in as a separate domain. And here we have the domains and the locations. And then the next what we tried to do is who, what, when. So who has done what and when. So here we took the assessment factors and then went by this. So we have communities, groups, and individuals. We're enlisting them all in the work document, and I will show you this is a little bit later. And then here we went, decided to go after the safeguarding activities, and then we decided to split up the safeguarding activities into 4 different sections and look at this and look at the outputs in each of these activities. For example, what communities or what groups or what individuals have done in terms of identification, documentation, and research, or in preservation and protection, or promotion, or transmission. And we're enlisting all those outputs in the 3rd column. So, and then the same design goes for the NGO sector and civil society. and the same goes for the private sector. Here in terms of private sector, we had some difficulties because we don't really have much data on this. And then I will show you, as I mentioned earlier, the document when I finish with the presentation. And here's the document that that looks just like this table, and then but it's of course a little bit more extensive, and then it goes for 3 different elements. And the next framework is the involvement of the media in awareness raising about the importance of ICH and in safeguarding. Then here we have 4. So it's a little bit cloudy. Here we have assessment factors, but we decided not to look into the assessment factors in particular, but to look at the domains. So here in our national inventory, we have 7 domains, and then we took the domains and the elements, and then we're looking at the TV channels specific programs and the language they broadcast, and the duration or the frequency of programs or shows that are targeting each of the elements or domain in general. So, and in this way, we can see what elements are getting more attention and what elements are missing out. And then we can see and perhaps have some, measures introduced, maybe. Yeah, and then the table looks this way. So, for example, in oral traditions, the epic trilogy, and then we have national TV channels, and then the programs, and mostly those programs are in Kyrgyz language, and the duration are twice a week programs. So this is the short document that we have. And then while we've been working on this, we've been working on these 2 frameworks for the last month. And now we have encountered quite a few challenges because there is no systematized data. And then because all the safeguarding activities, they're all dispersed. So you have to really look into different organizations, into different groups. And then there's not much open access data, because some of the TVs, they do have websites, some of them, they don't have website. And then even if they do have websites, then they don't actually post or upload their TV programs. So we had to go with the official request with the help of the National Commission. But even then, we couldn't really get much information because not everyone is very cooperative. And then by looking at all those safeguarding measures, we encountered that not much terminology and convention concepts are used. The awareness on the convention is quite poor among, as well as community members and other groups and NGOs. And also the uneven distribution of safeguarding efforts, because there are some elements that are very popular and much of the effort is going into them. And then there are some elements that only exist in the national inventory, and not much has been done. But of course, we haven't been able to look at the other 24 frameworks, but we have plans for the future to try to look at least more than 2 frameworks and see what has been done. So, and now I would like to show you the actual document and see. So this is, for example, for indicator number 21 on the epic heritage. We have here the translation into Russian, and so some outputs for identification and documentation and research. We also tried to look at the PhD studies that have been done here. We looked for the last 5 years from 2015 to 2020, and then the books published by different community members and individuals and groups, and also the research projects and also the archival documents. And so also for preservation protection, we put out the actually policies and laws that have been adopted. And for promotion and enhancement here, like on the TV or on different programs on YouTube channels, like individual epic tellers have different programs and stories that they tell. So we've tried to put all these here. And transmission, particularly through formal and non-formal education, here we have the courses introduced by the epic tellers or by community members, and also the associations of young epic tellers. So, and for the NGO, we try to enlist all the NGOs that are active today, or associations and unions, and then what they have been done. So, and for sacred sites, we don't have one document. It's not complete for the instrumental music because we didn't have much time to complete this table, but also the same goes for the pilgrimage practices. But here for preservation, protection, and promotion by the community members, we couldn't find documented data on the frequency of their pilgrimages and performance of the practices, because this is a regular activity that is done. And then since there are lots of communities, and then they don't keep track of their pilgrimage routes or schedule, so it's very difficult to find and keep the factual data. So, and then transmission of this community, transmission and particularly through non-formal education only here communities, because it's the traditions of pilgrimage practices are passed on through the oral heritage, or like through interaction, while community members, they involve their friends and family, and then they do the rituals, perform the ritual together and do the pilgrimage together. So, and then for NGOs, INSCRC is our NGO, is the only NGO working in the field of pilgrimage practices. So pretty much what we've done is the only data that we have. It's on identification and documentation and research. It's the number of publications, produced documentaries, and then inventory. For the last 2 years, we had, with the help of the International Assistance Fund.
You have 2 minutes more.
Okay, yeah, I'm almost done. So we actually made an inventory of 1,233 sacred sites and 36 pilgrimage rituals, and we're trying to get that in, as I told earlier, as a separate domain into the national inventory. So, so that's all that we have for this one. And the indicator number 18, as I showed in the presentation, yeah, we're focusing on domains. So here we can see more or less even distribution of TV show programs on different ICH elements. But the only thing is that most of these programs are in Kyrgyz. Almost all of them actually are Kyrgyz. And then it doesn't give much chance for other community members or other ethnic groups living in Kyrgyzstan to access this information. So in that respect, some of these assessment factors of framework number 18 is not well achieved. So that's everything that we wanted to share, and then all your suggestions and feedbacks or comments are welcome. Since it's a relatively new concept for us, so it was that's what we tried to do, to assess and to measure what has been done so far. Yeah, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Chalpana. I think you presented very nice approach, which is quite doable for us. I'd like to ask others, I mean, can all of us who are in this working group, can we try to do this for 2-3 ICH elements we work with, covering all the variations? They have nicely covered, you know, sites, sacred sites, like pilgrimage-based ICH, and also performing traditions, right, Chalpana?
Yes, and I think we can, for like framework number 21, I think we can also involve other elements, not only the 3 that I mentioned. And then, of course, they can be worked on with other frameworks, and then other approaches can be developed. But this is what we try to do for concerning our work. Yeah, and also to the challenge of periodic.
Janet has a question. Can you see that? She wants to know how can this address to the challenge of periodic reporting? Janet, would you like to elaborate your question?
Yeah, in fact, if it's possible for me quickly to share my screen, it might explain my question a bit. Is that okay?
Yes.
Thanks. Gosh. It may take a little bit of time to come up. I'm not sure. Tell me when you're seeing it. Are you seeing it yet? Yep. So what I've put here is just out of, just question 21.1 from the Periodic Reporting Forum. And what what my question really is about, that we had this 3-webinar expert meeting a week ago or so, in which some of the colleagues here were present. And it's very clear that filling out the periodic reporting online form is proving quite challenging. And I think indicator 21 is one of the big challenges also. And I just thought it was useful to look at the shape of how the form is, how the questions look, because I think that might inform this kind of work going forward. As I said in my chat, I think what you've done is extremely interesting and very valuable, but I think it's also a great idea if we can try and maybe link it with this approach and see how we can develop, the sort of NGO Forum support to reporting state parties going forward. So that was what I wanted to just mention.
Yeah, it's a very good point. In fact, Chalpana, you can work on this and try to respond to this. Do you have any feedback, Chalpana, right now?
Right now, actually, I'm with the periodic reporting, since I'm not a representative of the state party, that's why it's quite difficult for me to respond on this. And then I actually don't know how the state party does the periodic reporting. So perhaps we could actually discuss it with Gunara Manna and then provide our feedback back. But I guess actually. I'm not sure, but couldn't really find any information while we were working on this on the state's monitoring or measurement of the safeguarding activities for all the ICH elements, or at least for some of them. So I don't know, but I guess it would be a good idea if to provide if NGOs could work on these frameworks and prepare materials that the state parties could use for their reporting, since just in our example, state parties don't really have any information on the safeguarding activities that are going on. So perhaps NGOs could provide that information for them working on the frameworks.
Okay. Is there any other comments or questions? Thanks, Janet, for bringing this up. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll invite. No, okay, Bertie has written something. Bertie, would you like to explain, like to speak and explain? I think we can keep this as a long-term goal, because what we discussed in our first meeting was that, over a few months, we'll explore each of the indicators, and then maybe we will be in a position to write a guidebook kind of thing. That's my take on it. Any other suggestions are welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate. Thanks.
Okay.
I don't want to disturb the process, and it will be good if you could plan on that. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Okay, so may I invite Xinghua now to share these examples?
Hello, everyone. My name is Shenhua Hong. I'm an International Affairs Manager at CICS, Center for Intangible Culture Studies here in Jeonju, South Korea. Today, I will be presenting to you about kimjang, which is the making and sharing of kimchi in the Republic of Korea. Kimjang was inscribed in 2013 to the UNESCO's representative list of ICH of humanity. This presentation in particular will be about the Kimjang case study surrounding the Sangsudong village of Seongnam City. Okay. Okay. About the culture of Kimjang, making and sharing kimchi. Traditionally, Kimjang has been an essential part of Korean life. It is an essential part of Korean life in order to endure long and harsh winter. It can be seen that kimchi appeared in the records about 760 years ago. Since then, kimchi has become an essential food for Koreans beyond class and region. The simplest meal consists of rice and kimchi, but even the most luxurious dinner cannot be completed without kimchi. Kimjang is deeply rooted in Korea's natural environment, and the preparation of kimjang varies from year to year depending on the season. There is a custom of exchanging kimchi with neighbors throughout, which helps with receipts, recipes, and creative ideas accumulated and shared with neighbors. Kimchi is a vegetable dish that goes through lactic fermentation after seasoned with spices, fruits, meat, and fish sauce with various vegetables. Just as rice represents the staple food of Korea, so is kimchi a Korean side dish because the flavors of the ingredients are used and well harmonized. Daily consumption of kimchi in Korea is very prevalent. Okay, 15.1, do communities, groups, and individuals use their ICH for their well-being, including in the context of sustainable development programs, was the question. Regarding this question, the 사랑의 김장, which translates in English to Kimjang Out of Love program, is a local initiative out of Sanseongdong village in Seongnam City. The program is dedicated to making kimchi for the lower income, disabled, and elderly of the Sanseongdong village of Seongnam City. Next, 15.2, do communities, groups, and individuals use their ICH for dialogue, promoting mutual respect, conflict resolution, and peace building? Kimjang is about solidarity of one's surrounding. And promotes communications between all the members involved. For the most part, solidarity of one's surrounding is deeply rooted in Korean culture. Kimjang symbolizes a part of national identity that is synonymous with social / family gathering, much like a holiday. The participants are usually neighbors, friends, or family members embracing the kimjang as a ceremony for making kimchi. In that sense, kimjang is always promoting mutual respect, conflict resolution, and peace building. 15.3, do development interventions recognize the importance of ICH in society as a source of identity and continuity, and a source of knowledge and skills, and strengthen its role as a resource to enable sustainable development? Urbanization has caused the Sangsondong village to split down the line between the rural and urban regions. One side, it can be high rises can be seen throughout, and Kimjang is not practiced by the occupants who are mostly younger professionals who have not prioritized Kimjang as a modern necessity. That leaves the poor people across the line in the rural Sanseongdong village promoting Kimjang. The 사랑의 김장 or 김장 out of love produce 700 cabbages to hand out to the poor and the elderly, which is a remarkable amount of kimchi considering a large kimjang would yield on average 20 to 40 cabbages. However, with the gentrification of Sanseongdong and the locals leaving, community-based kimjang will no longer be practiced. The statistics or indicators would suggest development intervention is working, producing large amounts of participants and kimchi. However, promoting kimjang as a source of identity and continuity and source of knowledge and skills they lack to promote. The ever-changing norms of society has made kimjang a declining practice, impractical to a busy society. Commercialization is taking over the community of making kimchi, as many pre-made kimchi products are easily available. Overall, all three indicators seem to work in the Korean kimjang case. However, for the future of sustainable development of kimjang, there are concerns and questions. Okay, that's it. Any questions or inquiries, please?
Ananya, you're on mute.
I'm sharing the screen which Janet just shared, link which Janet just shared, and for 15, see, this is how the report is. Do communities, groups, and individuals use? So, Shenhua, it will be yes for this particular ICH, right? How will you respond? Because basically you gave a descriptive thing, so my question is that to you.
Yes, that would be answered yes.
Yes. Then communities, groups, individuals use their ICH for dialogue.
Yes.
Next is development interventions recognize the importance of ICH.
Yeah, regarding this question, it would be yes, in a sense that indicator would suggest that it was effective. The development intervention, the government development intervention would be effective, but in ICH as a continued that needs transmission, it would be kind of on borderline.
Okay, so next is the important part where they're trying to, say that to work, the level of satisfaction. So will it be partially or largely? And how will you define the target? I mean, this is a question to everyone actually. I mean, first, I think the indication is not at ICH level. The reporting, periodic reporting is not at ICH level. But still, if we go by ICH, just for simplifying the case as we are working, how do we set targets? Any ideas?
Ananya, could I ask you to click yes on one of the boxes to show what happens?
Yes.
So that you see the pop-up box that comes. If you go further up the form, just click on one of the yes answers and then see what happens. That's interesting.
Okay.
You see?
So everywhere there is a narrative. Yeah. And if I do no, let me see. No, they are not asking anything, but yes, there is a narrative. Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, there are one or two questions in the forum where the no elicits more information, but very few. Mostly it's a yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is how we are to report. So that kind of, clears our ideas.
Can I have a quick question? It's actually a very silly question, I guess. But so in the periodic reporting, do these answers have to be for all the elements inscribed in the national inventory, or only for the chosen elements? Or if it's for all the elements, then all the elements have to be reviewed and analyzed and measured, right? Is that correct?
Anyone knows the answer? It is, I think.
A question. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you very well. I apologize.
What she's asking that will the analysis be at ICH level for all elements in national inventory or only selected ones? How are states supposed to go about it?
Wow, there's a humdinger of a question. I would have thought, I mean, I'm all for flexibility on these things. I would have thought that as long as whoever is filling out the form, who will be somebody who probably works in a ministry, right? So they may have a tendency to go for the official inventories, yes. But at the same time, I don't think there's any limitation as long as it's explained what you're talking about. So I would have thought you can say, yeah, this is the official national, but we also have these other ones.
Yeah, because like, for example, for indicator number 15, if we say, yeah, the answers can be yes to some of the, questions for some of the elements, but also no for the others. So I'm just interested how this one goes, because the representation will not be, because the ICH elements are not going to be fully represented, so.
I'm going to have another look at the form right now and write you a response in the chat box when I've had a chance to check, because there are one or two questions specific to the inventories, and how those are set up also will determine the response to your question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
But Janet, if I'm right, it's in general the case that if you answer yes, then it's still a question of producing the narrative with the yes, with all the nuances and the contextual information. Actually, it's up to the state party to decide what they will put there in this yes, but.
Sure. I mean, what came out because I conducted the regional periodic training of national focal points a month or so ago for Latin America, Caribbean, and it was a point that they brought up saying, there are many questions where we feel we can answer yes and put an example in the box, but we know that the reality on the ground is that not very much has yet been done. And so in a way, this has to be up to the person filling out the form to decide if the baseline suddenly looks way too good for the reality that they're trying to present. The problem is, and this is an issue with the forum, that if you then say no, you don't get an opportunity to explain no, but, which I think probably in the future might be necessary.
Okay, Atawa, over to you.
I'm sorry, did you say it was my turn, Ananya? Yes, thank you.
Yes.
All right. Let's try to share my screen somehow. Partager l'écran. Desktop. Okay. Just put it that way. Can you see it? All right.
Yes, we can see.
You can hear me? All right. Thank you very much, Ananya and everybody, for giving me the opportunity of of presenting two wonderful indicators, which is 7 and 11. I am Antoine Gauthier, the Chief Executive Officer for Quebec Council of Intangible Heritage here in Canada. And we are beginning to having a good discussion with great questions about how to fill this overall result framework. I hope my contribution will help a little bit for some things or not, but to help the conversation at least, because we've been doing some measurement for some years now in Canada regarding ICH. Just a quick saying that the Quebec Council for Intangible Heritage is like an umbrella organization for maybe more than 100 of other associations throughout the territory for elements of ICH or ICH in general, or specific elements of it. So it's kind of a umbrella or democratic umbrella organizations that is doing things like measurements, among other things. We had a few years ago an event, and we tried to fill with the people the overall result framework somehow. And then we tried it also for Quebec City a few months ago, and all the constatations, I don't know if you can say it in English, kind of the findings or the results of it is exactly what the question was asked by Chol Pranay, among other things, like, are we assessing ICH in general? If so, it's going to be very vague and not very helpful to safeguard it. Are we doing it element by element? If so, it's going to be quite hard to have all the measurements and stuff. We've been doing it here at the CQPV, but it's quite a lot of job if you want to change things, because I believe the 2003 convention is about changing things. Safeguarding is about changing situations for the better. So this was hard to try to fill it. And then the other conclusion was it's always easier. It's always easy to say yes to something and then give a little slight example, and then you click yes, and then you say, all right, we did it. But in the reality, it's so small that it would be better to state it like what could be done. What is not done actually is more relevant somehow sometimes for the safeguarding. So we did it for among other measurements for all the municipalities and cities that have included ICH in their own public policies. And then one of the findings, what they don't, even if they put it in their own policy, they don't really understand what it is. They don't really do much stuff related to ICH. Sometimes they understand it more like a historical commemoration, or so yeah, we did together with the Ministry of Culture a guidebook to help municipalities to understand a little better what is ICH. And then since a few years, we're publishing element by element measurements, which is kind of a bit it's an in-between of inventory and overall result framework type of thing, since it's like measurements of element by elements with a lot of parameters, and it gives recommendation for changing, for enhancing the elements, who could do what for the better of it, and what the state could do and what the municipalities could do. So we consult the stakeholders, and we arrive at some recommendation for the future, which is, I think, what should be important for safeguarding. So let's quickly look at the core indicator 7. So it's about inventories, how the inventories are reflecting the diversity of ICH, which means like a lot of elements, and how it contributes to safeguarding, the extent to which it contributes to safeguarding, which is a big challenge. It's easy to click yes again, but it's a big challenge to assess the extent of the contribution for inventorying system. So how it contributes, for the Quebec City, we are doing it. We are looking at the various inventories that have been done in Canada, mostly in Quebec, of several municipalities, the national Quebec one, and there are no inventories that have been looked afterwards, like are there any results for safeguarding? So no inventories, maybe out of 10 or 12, they never provided, even to the municipality itself, they never provided any results, like is it working or is it not working, what should we do in the future? So it was basically like some things to put on the web, documentation, and then we forget about it, and then we do other stuff. Just to resume a little bit. So it's hard to, the 7.3, how the existing inventory reflect the current viability of elements included. I hope in the box we click, maybe we could see it afterwards. There's some room for recommendation, because there's no point about just putting it is viable, it is very alive, it is rare, it is to be extinct. If we don't have any recommendation with the people, with the community, with the group, how can we change it? With whom? Which is again the thing that is interesting for me. So as for 7.4, they are utilized to strengthen safeguarding. There's no clear, so far, no clear clue that they are actually, the inventories in Quebec utilize, well, there's no clue about the extent to which it's utilized to strengthen safeguarding. So we are currently asking a lot of people that have been into the inventories with a set of questions. Did it change things for you? Did it change a lot of questions. We are doing it right now, so we'll have some results pretty soon, and we are asking municipalities and so on. So this is exactly what I was telling you. And this is the book we did, translated with the help of the Canadian Commission for UNESCO in English. It's available in English. The other core indicator, 11, is about cultural policies and administrative measure, if they are being implemented. So is there any cultural policy in your country, in this case in Quebec or Canada, and are they being implemented? Where in Canada, there's nothing specifically for ICH because the country didn't ratify the convention, but Quebec province has it in the law. So we can assess it for the Quebec province. So yes, it exists. Yes, there's national or some national strategies now. Yes, there are public, financial somehow, and yes, there are active participation of communities. But the interesting question is to what extent, because it's easy again to click yes. You will always find something to click yes. There's so much going on in cultural space. You will always be able, almost always at least, to click yes. But how then you measure with interesting figures that are going to help to change things, because again, safeguarding is to change the situation for the better again. So we measure, this is just a little part of the measurement we did on our cultural traditions from Quebec in numbers that helped us to say to the state, you know, you are giving money to this or this or this, but look at the ICH, this element, or ICH in general, whatever, you don't give money to this. And sometimes it's not because of bad faith. Sometimes yes, but generally speaking, it's not because of bad faith. It's because they don't know it, because the ministries don't talk to each other, because of a lack of information. And that's our job. That's the job of the overall result framework, to give information the same to everybody, so we can work together to change things. Just like sometimes just the word in red here, like no money is given for traditional dance over more than $2 million for the training in dance. So then you arrive with those numbers and you say to the government, look, you have an ICH policy, but you don't give any money to it. So please change it, you know, be consequent. And then they changed it, you know. But so the measurement and the ORF is helping us. I'm just gonna say that the 11.3, we worked hard in China to put it on the core indicator, thanks to the NGOs who were there, and thanks to Peru and Senegal. We put for the first time an equitable basis, you know, because again, it's easy to click for a country. Oh yeah, we do a little $5,000 project, but is it, if you look at the big figure, you know, at the big all amount you give for heritage or for culture, this is nothing, you know. You need to give some equitable resources, be it money or help or locals or whatever, or buildings or whatever, you know. But it has to be relevant to the scale of your economy. So this is, I think, a huge improvement in this ORF, and this is a way to measure, because it's always easy to measure a small thing, but when you compare to other resources given by the state or municipality, then you can, it helps to change more, because you can always say that's not enough, or that's enough sometimes, but that's not enough, because you're giving money to everybody and us just a little part, but you have to be able to quantify it. So that's why we're doing this kinds of quantification. This is not just for math or statistics. This is to change things. So the Ministry of Cultures afterwards is changing stuff. It gave the support for national umbrella organization after all those measurements. It has now a new action plan, including ICH, because of the pressure we put with those measurements, among other ingredients. New funding for traditional music teaching directly related to those assessments. New network of traditional dance events. For the first time, there's money for traditional dance here in Quebec, for the first time, among millions and millions for dance of dollars. There's now a Living Human Treasure Systems funded by the Ministry of Culture, which is a good thing. There's some new funds, maybe small again, but keeping improving for ICH projects for all the association in the territory. So I think this is very positive, and the tool of our ORF and the inventories, if you use it properly, it's going to help to change things, I believe. And maybe someday Canada is going to ratify the convention. Maybe, we hope so. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. My question to you is that you have been working for many years for, the tracking the measurements. So have you incorporated the indicators as in the outlined in the results framework? Have you?
I'm sorry, Ananya, I couldn't hear well your question.
Yeah, my question is, you have been measuring since many years, as you had shared. Now, are you measuring as per the results framework now? Have you brought in that change?
We tried to use the exact wording of the result framework, but it's...
Are you using the approach of the results framework?
We are using the approach and the spirit of it. And I believe we can fill the ORF with all the measurement we have, but we chose not to use the ORF we chose not to publish books that would be just the filling of ORF, because it would lack pertinence. How do you say that? It would lack, it would be not enough, and not the right exact framing always, because we always change a bit the framing. If we are talking about traditional medicine herbs, we're going to look to the health systems. If we're speaking about traditional music, we have a look also to the TV shows and stuff like that. So it changed. I believe it can be worded into the ORF, but I would say we collect data and we analyze data that can be afterwards useful to fill the ORF. Yeah. But it is in the spirit. It is look-alike kind of, because when you want to measure stuff anyway, you're going to measure the stuff that it is. So it's not completely different.
Any other questions? Marit has a question. Marit, would you like to share your question? Marit, you are muted.
Sorry, it will happen again. It's not directly related to Antoine's presentation, but to everybody, since I have discovered this 2030 cultural indicators of UNESCO, which is built on all cultural convention and programs of UNESCO. Do you know if there's any relation to this new overall results framework of ICH to this system?
Maybe Janet knows. What I could reply is that at least the SDGs were developed when also the chapter 6 of the convention was developed, and it was already into view when the overall results framework was developed. So it was somewhere in the background, but I don't have the insight on how directly the linkage has been made between some of the indicators, or the check has been made indicator per indicator to have the link.
Yeah, I think they discussed, some specific SDGs, if I recall. Maybe Janet can give more details, like education, and I think peace, some of the indicators.
I think the short answer is that there are a lot of commonalities, but where we find them, they are perhaps unintentional, in the sense that if you look at what UNESCO has done in terms of measuring sort of cultural statistics as such, they certainly measure things which are highly relevant to ICH, but they don't measure them because of ICH up until now. That's perhaps the short answer. And equally, when you look at the way the SDGs are measured, I mean, first, we know there isn't a single one in culture, so that's our starting point. But if we look at SDG 4, the one in education, which is one of the closest ones, then it's very interesting. But within this UIS in Montreal, there seems to be a real firewall between the guys looking at cultural statistics and the guys looking at educational statistics. And we found that one of the challenges we had setting up the meeting, which was an intersectoral meeting, the one on the educational indicators of periodic reporting and looking partly at the connection with SDGs, that was one of the big problems. We could get the cultural statistics guys on board. They were very happy. But the guys from education said, this doesn't speak to us at all. So there's a real big internal problem also about this within UNESCO, let alone UNESCO with regard to Agenda 2030.
Okay, so we are in the last 5 minutes, so all of you are welcome to share your comments and questions. Now, I'd like to share what we had planned in our last meeting, and this is a
Did we lose Ananya? Yes. So I guess
I think so.
Something was wrong with my computer, so I moved here. Janet mentioned about the connection between our work and the reporting of the state party. I guess it's a very important point. Chulpanai was not involved, but again, I mean, the center was involved in providing some materials for the state party. So it's a very important issue. The only probably point we probably need to elaborate more attentively, more thoroughly, this, I mean, connection and this contributions through our, I mean, indicators work. Because I mean, that level, yes, no, and high, it's good, but as Antonia just explained very carefully, it doesn't reflect many activities or many problems which we have in the field. So I guess, yes, we need to think how we can contribute to the state party reporting through our work, but probably we need to also I mean, together elaborate more carefully this contribution and this connection. Thank you.
So shall we go ahead with our plan to have another meeting like this after 3 months? What do you think? Will it be useful? And you know, now that Janet has shared this online format, we can all refer to that also.
And Ananya, how do you see, I mean, do you think that we need just to meet in 3 months, or we will work regularly and share online?
So basically, that's what all of us will work with the ICH and the elements and communities we work with and try to fill up the results framework. So like 3 groups, 3 NGOs were ready today, we were not. So I am requesting all of you to work on this and come back to the working group. So I'll keep on mailing maybe after 1 month and then 2 months. And then those who will make some progress, we can share further. Janet, may I request you to share some more on the expert meeting, any points which would be relevant for the working group to work on?
Oh, now you put me in the spot, Ananya. Yorin and Hani, you were there too. So if there's anything that I missed, please add it. I mean, I think that the first really important point is that filling out this online form is quite challenging. And I think also that the last presentation by Antoine really, you know, brings that out. The challenge of how do you measure in primarily quantitative terms something which we assess very much qualitatively, or for us the qualitative aspects are very, very important. And this is actually why the forum has the architecture it has, where it seeks to respond to the extent to which, on one side, which is a sort of more quantitative, but it asks you to describe. So there's, you know, it's a slightly paradoxical approach in a way, but that's the nature of the field. I would actually say, get stuck in on the forum, you know, really, with an element you know very well or whatever, just play around with it. You'll start to see, you know, what it requires of you and where the difficulties lie. And in a way that although the forum was designed very much to align with the ORF, at the same time, the requirements of an online periodic reporting forum mean that, you know, it's transformed, and there are a number of things now being asked that are not necessarily in the ORF as well, or some nuances that are being being asked. And the question of how does it relate to other reporting frameworks, there were actually a few interesting, I mean, we were focusing on the educational indicators, right? Not other indicators. There were some interesting examples, and I can't off the top of my head name them right now, of various other monitoring, other monitoring educational indicators which have relevance to what we're doing. I mean, the broad lesson from that is also we need to look beyond the ICH part. You know? It's very multi-sectoral, this. And that's also one of the big challenges. And how far, I don't know how far it's possible in people's particular context to actually, because we know that getting government agencies to work intersectorally is really challenging. But maybe the interesting thing is to start reaching out to other NGOs, ones who work in the development field, ones who work in education, health. They may have a lot of interesting information that's relevant to what we need to know. That's really what I can think of right now, Ananya.
Thanks, Janet. We are at the end of our meeting. So any quick comments, suggestions, anyone wants to add to our plan of action as a working group? And we can always continue the dialogue over email.
Maybe Ananya, for next time, as our NGO had to make up a policy plan for the strategic plan for the work of our organization, just after the framework was finished, we used it as a strategic framework also for the design of our plans between 2019 and 2023. So the framework is also the framework of our work currently. Of course, it's too soon to evaluate, but it's an interesting model maybe also for NGOs to start seeing how they can implement it in their own strategic planning, and then how this can reconnect to the work of the ministries and so on. At least several NGOs in the network are also the NGOs implementing the convention in close cooperation with the ministries. And then you get an interesting dynamic between this framework and the theory of change that is behind, as Antoine also explained. How can we set goals for our own NGO that are trying to make progress in some of the results that are targeted in the framework? And at least in our country, it's working quite well already this way.
Thanks. So maybe next time we'll be glad if you can share more in our next meeting. Okay, so we are past 6, so we have to close the meeting now. And thanks to all of you and the presenters for being here and participating. So hopefully we'll take this forward more better. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.